All right, live TikTok. Once again, waiting for people to jump into the live. Haven't really told anybody that I'm going live right now. Just thought I'd do this. Anybody that I'm going live right now. Just thought I'd do this. We got a lot to talk about, though. We do. Good day today. Hostages in Gaza were released. The ceasefire appears to at least temporarily be underway. Donald Trump went to Egypt to discuss the ceasefire and to sign it and to take a victory lap. And of course, he embarrassed himself as he was taking his victory lap. He says the most idiotic things as he's giving his speech there in Egypt. I did a video about it where he says, "Well, look at Air Force One. You know, hard to imagine, but just a few months ago it was covered in sand, but now look at it. The sand only comes up to the windows, and it's a beautiful thing to behold." I have no idea what he was talking about. I don't know that he knows what he was talking about. It made no sense to anybody. And he just continued to embarrass himself from there. Prior to that, Donald Trump went to the Israeli parliament and spoke. And he lamented the fact that they took way too long to speak, and then that they were making him late because they were addressing their own country's parliament. And those speeches went too long for Donald Trump. Then once he got on the mic, he spoke for like an hour. And then he signs the signature book for people who have spoke to the Israeli parliament, and he takes up an entire page signed in black Sharpie. It's just ridiculous. This man has no decorum. He has no idea of how to be political, to be a diplomat. He is definitely an outsider in this world. I see Bren's out there. Bren's kind of a regular. Seeing a few new names out there. We're going to be talking news and politics. If you have any comments about today's events or just the state of the nation in general here in the United States, leave them in the comments. I'll address them as I get to them. If you haven't been on one of my lives before, it's usually a pretty good conversation as we discuss a lot of things going on. And I try to break things down into what can and can't happen, etc. Donald Trump is just an embarrassment on the world stage. He really is. And I know there's a section of this country that likes to, cheer for Donald Trump, and they think it's great that he's an outsider. But at this point in the game, when he is in his second term, in his fifth year of being president overall, he should end up and you're gone. He should end up, knowing more about how things actually worked. And as far as the Trump-la-fuck I just blocked, it's easier to block him than it is to teach him. It really is. And as far as the Trump-la-fuck I just blocked, it's easier to block him than it is to teach him. It really is. They have made Donald Trump their entire personality. He says they said it was easier to negotiate with Hamas than it was to negotiate with the Democrats. Here's the thing. They have not negotiated with Democrats at all. Not really. They had one meeting. Donald Trump didn't really know what was going on. Didn't know about any of it. And then turns around and basically don't negotiate. He hasn't been there to negotiate. Mike Johnson's not there to negotiate. Republicans aren't negotiating. Their version of negotiating this time is saying, this is what we want you to do. Do it. That's not a negotiation. That's being a bully. Gen X Jace says, Biden in his wisdom giving Trump this win. Yeah. And Jace also says, Biden just happy for temporary peace. I mean, they left him a roadmap. I mean, they left him a roadmap. They left Donald Trump a roadmap for how to get to peace in the Middle East. They did. And Donald Trump actually followed it. They went, well, we don't have any other plan. Let's try this. And if Donald Trump steals it completely and tries to take credit, you know what? That's exactly what Donald Trump does. We know this. The Dems have been very gracious, more than Republicans. Yeah. Dems have said, this is what we want. More than Republicans. Yeah. Dems have said, this is what we want. Let's negotiate. Let's talk about it. Republicans said, we're taking our ball and going home. Jay says, yep, Trump lucky to be in between Obama and Biden. Yeah, you got handed a great economy under Barack Obama. And for the first 2 years, it hummed along perfectly. And he looked like a genius for doing it. Yeah, sure, he passed his tax cuts that didn't do anything to the economy. It helped billionaires, but it didn't change much. Everything was humming along. Then he fucked up COVID. Bren says the connection, everything was humming along. Then he fucked up COVID. Bren says the connection keeps freezing. Let me see if I can make it any better here. You know, he was given a great economy under Obama. Then he fucked it with COVID. You know, he was given a great economy under Obama. Then he fucked it with COVID. Joe Biden brings it back to where it's halfway reasonable. And instead of leaving it alone, what does he do? He fucked it up again. It's like the guy has failed multiple businesses. Gen XJ says everything he touches dies. Yeah, everything Donald Trump touches dies. I mean, he bankrupted 2 casinos, which should be almost impossible. Casinos print money. As long as you have people going to them. But Donald Trump didn't understand. Carolyn says, yes, it is free. What do you mean? What's free? I don't understand what you were trying to say there. But, I mean, he's gone bankrupt like 7 times, at least. His charity organization was found liable for fraud, and his entire organization was told by a judge in New York State that they are not allowed to operate a charity in New York State because he couldn't operate one on the up and up. Everything he touches dies, and the people around him end up being the ones to hold the bag. I think ultimately, Donald Trump isn't going to make it to the 2028 general election. I don't think we have to worry. Carolyn says, my video's still freezing. Well, I took it off of Wi-Fi. I put it on mobile. That's the only other option I've got. I don't know why it's continuing to freeze. But I just don't think Donald Trump is healthy enough. You know, one thing I love about Trumplafucks and MAGAs, they make it super easy to block them. It's very easy. Gen XJ says Ed said Thanksgiving. And if you're in here and you know who the Rational Boomer is, over on his podcast, there is a guest that comes on about once a week. His name is Ed. And Ed has said he thinks Donald Trump doesn't make it to Thanksgiving. And given the performance Donald Trump gave today when he had to do a lot of traveling and a lot of speaking, Ed might be onto something. Donald Trump bitched and moaned when he was in the Israeli parliament that the people who should be addressing Israeli parliament, the Israelis, were taking too long to get to him. Then he spoke and rambled for an hour. Then he goes off, gets on a plane, goes to Egypt, and one of the first things he says during his remarks there is, well, look at Air Force One. It's hard to imagine. Just 3 months ago, it was buried under sand. But now it's not. Now it's down to the windows, and it looks great. I think it looks great. What does any of that mean? When was Air Force One buried under sand? Was he watching a movie where Air Force One was buried under sand and that was a plot point? It's not a plot point of a movie I'm familiar with, but maybe? Was it a dream he had? None of that made a lick of sense. But you have a section of this country that will tell us he is the most intelligent person to ever hold that office. It boggles the mind. Gen XJ says, God help us from an agnostic. Yeah, exactly. When the agnostics and the atheists are calling for divine help because somebody is just that stupid, we've got a situation on our hands. And he goes on. Donald Trump goes on during his remarks in Egypt to continue to embarrass himself and us as a country. He said to, what's his name in Hungary, Viktor Orban. He said, most people won't agree with me here, but you're great. I think you're great. But their opinions don't matter. Mine is the only one that matters. What? Again, he is delusional. He's saying the things that pop in his head out loud and embarrassing himself and us as a country. And he continues in the same speech. He turns to Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, and she was standing behind him. Turns to Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, and she was standing behind him. And you got to know the stench on that stage had to be awful. She was in line of fire of whatever was coming out of that diaper of his. And he says, well, geez, in my country, you'd get canceled for it, but I'm going to say it anyway. It'd be the end of your career, but I'm going to say it. She's a beautiful woman. And she looked really uncomfortable when he said that. She's a beautiful woman. And she looked really uncomfortable when he said that. What was he to accomplish? Other than embarrassing himself and this country. XJ says, and people I used to believe were intelligent still supporting this madness. Yeah. Isn't that the truth? You find out a lot about people. There have been numerous content creators since Donald Trump has been sworn in that I used to follow that I thought made good content. And when they stuck to their topics, made great content. I thought they were intelligent. And then they start talking some dumb shit that Trump did. Or they share a video of Donald Trump doing his YMCA dance And you're just like, Jesus Christ, I thought you were intelligent. I liked your content. And then I end up blocking them. It's just unreal how these people think. They're not, it's a cult. They're not well. And they use any attack we use against them as a way to attack us. They really do. You know, we say Donald Trump is deranged and a fascist. They say the left are deranged fascists. We say they're in a cult. They say, well, we're in a cult for Hillary or for Joe or for Kamala Harris or whoever. It's ridiculous. They don't have an original thought. They wake up every morning, turn on Fox News, get their talking point. And if they're not getting it from Fox News, they're getting it from a creator or a podcaster who got their talking points from Fox News. Gen XJ says no flag flying here. Yeah. I don't see why people would fly the flag right now. And it's not because I'm not patriotic. It's not because I don't love my country. It's simply I don't want to be associated with being MAGA right now. Because I'm not MAGA. Never have been. I saw through their bullshit. Lady Hawk says, nope, no flags right now. Exactly. It's sad that it has gotten to this point, but once again, because they have co-opted patriotism, makes me really question things. I just don't want to be confused for them. Gen X really question things. I just don't want to be confused for them. Gen XJ says ex-Republican, never MAGA. Yeah, well, I was never a full Republican. I was always independent. But I was independent that leaned heavily Republican. And I learned my lesson the hard way. This whole thing going on right now, every day there's some new embarrassment coming out with this administration. I did a video on it earlier. Maybe you guys saw these comments from Laura Loomer. And if you don't know who Laura Loomer is, she's a far-right nut job that goes around with Donald Trump. I'll come back to Laura Loomer in a second. Brent says, what do you think of Dummy calling the Italian Prime Minister beautiful, making a fool of himself? Yeah, I was talking about that. What was he hoping to accomplish? Was he hoping she'd be so impressed that he just said she was beautiful? That she would lay compliments at his feet? Or maybe go, back to his hotel room? I don't know what he was thinking. Like, he just says things at this point, hoping that people get a reaction, that they get a rise, because he has nothing left. And he's showing to his base, like, oh, they'll come back out and say, well, see, he said if I said it, I'll get canceled. And the left's trying to cancel him. And that'll be something that he can claim as a win. Brent says, I've missed a lot as this live is freezing. Yeah, I don't know why my internet's being so weird. I've tried resetting the... I've switched from Wi-Fi to mobile. I thought that would fix it, but it still hasn't. But speaking of Laura Loomer, she took to Twitter today to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene has been sounding kind of normal lately. As scary as that sounds. And she was talking about what Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to accomplish by sounding normal. And she thinks Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to make a run for president in 2028. Get this, as a Democrat. It would never happen. But they can't even agree with themselves at this point. Their infighting is ridiculous. And they're turning on each other. I've only got about 10 people in this room so far, hoping we get a few more. But I appreciate everybody who's been sitting here with me. Brent says, who knocked her upside the head? Donald Trump did. Trump and establishment Republicans, or MAGA Republicans, when they told her she couldn't run for Georgia Senate because they didn't think she could win. They told her she couldn't run for governor because they didn't think she could win. Now she took the shift and she said, okay, well, I don't want to run anyway. And she kind of backed down and made it look like it was her choice. But they told her, no, you can't run for a statewide Georgia race. So she is starting to back away from Trump because she got burned by him. And when Marjorie Taylor Greene starts to be the voice of reason out of the Republican Party, that's a bad sign. Brent says, do you think this ceasefire will stick? Short term, maybe. Long term, who knows? Quantum says, I heard Bibi's speech today giving Israel's highest honor. I was embarrassed for the world. Yeah, I think we all were. I haven't done a video talking about that yet, but that was just embarrassing. Trying to claim that that was a more prestigious honor than the Nobel. What was that all about? AI Trucker says, Trump doing great. You actually believe that? What's he doing great with? What's he succeeding on? Where are his wins? Yep, that just proves I know exactly what to do with you, AI Trucker. Taylor says he's doing great, messing everything in the world up. Yeah, he fucks it up. He tries to fix it and fucks it up worse. Yeah, Brent already blocked. I don't deal with Trumplefucks. Still love that word from the Rational Boomer. I just don't deal with them. I think that's part of why I've not gotten any community guideline violations. I've never gotten a live taken down. My posts stay up. No strikes. The only issues I've had with any of my posts have been something going wonky with TikTok, where I record it and it goes to post, and then the video doesn't upload right, and there's no video. It's just it goes to post, and then the video doesn't upload right, and there's no video. It's just audio, and they, for whatever reason, TikTok files the way as only me. I delete it, re-edit it, and put it up, and it's just fine. Audio, and they, for whatever reason, TikTok files the way as only me. I delete it, re-edit it, and put it up, and it's just fine. I don't know what that's been about. It's been really annoying, though. It's been happening at least almost for about 2 weeks. Huck says, love the rational. Yeah, I love the rational boomer too. Um, we're going to be getting together again soon to do another podcast. Always fun when I'm over on the rational boomer talking for hour and a half. Great conversation, ending up, you know, getting through all the news of the day in a longer form than what you can do here, and don't have to deal with nearly as many community guideline violations because of where he posts it and things like that. You're a little freer with what you can say, not having to get around uh, TikTok and their ridiculous standards. Baker said it's freezing again. Hopefully, it kind of fixed itself. I don't know what else to do. Like I said, I took it off of Wi-Fi because that was almost worse, and then turned around and it's still kind of freezing. Mike Johnson gave away kind of the playbook today. Oh, Joe, thank you for the gift. Mike Johnson kind of gave away the playbook today. Oh, Joe, thank you for the gift. Um, Mike Johnson kind of gave away the playbook today, or is it kind of bouncing? Because on my end, it's showing everything on my end being good. I don't know why it's freezing though. Quantum says, why is it when MAGA or Republicans get in office, they fuck everything up and the Dems have to fix it? It's because they don't actually have policies in a lot of cases, or their policies haven't worked, and they rebrand the same failed policy as something else. We've been dealing with trickle-down economics for 40 years. It hasn't worked. Donald Trump brings tariffs back. They didn't work leading into the Great Depression. None of that was new. But the one thing that they have been able to successfully do has been message and brand. And it doesn't matter how good the economy is going under a Democrat, Republicans find a way to message to the American people about how bad things are under a Democrat and how much better they would be under a Republican, even though all of the evidence points to the contrary. Democrats are just very bad at messaging. Very bad at messaging. Yeah, MAGAs are blind to how bad the Republicans actually are for the economy and everything else. It is kind of amazing how Republicans have been able to just lie to the MAGAs. But it doesn't help when they don't look past Fox News or OAN or Newsmax or whatever right-wing source they get their news from. And they view anything that says anything other than what their favorite talking head personality says as fake news. You could show them 10 articles, 10 different news clips, all saying the same thing, and they will say that's all fake and show you one Fox News clip saying the opposite. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to appear stupid, so they double and triple down on what they think is the truth, and they hold on to it. It's dumb, but that's what they do. Well, we got, Democrats are holding the line on this government shutdown. They are not moving from this position of they want the Affordable Care Act subsidies extended and they want the money that was cut from Medicaid returned. That's their two asks. Republicans have not put forward any sort of compromise measures. None. In fact, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has kept the House closed. They're not going to be around for a votes again this week. They're closed. I think ultimately what is probably going to happen to Mike Johnson, one of two things is going to happen. Either one, they're going to end up having to give in to Democrats to get the government open. And when they do, MAGA votes to oust Mike Johnson. And he ends up being gone as speaker, and we have to spend weeks getting a new speaker. Or they don't oust him over that. They get the government open, they call the House back, and then they force a vote on the discharge petition. And because they don't want to have to face their voters, a bunch of Republicans turn on the Republican base and say, yeah, we're going to release the Epstein files. And, Donald Trump gets pissed at Mike Johnson, calls up a few select MAGA Republicans, and they vote to oust him anyway. I don't know if his speakership survives the year if they get through this government shutdown and they hold the vote on the Epstein files. I just don't. I don't think he makes it. Who do they get in their place? No idea. I don't think they have a number two right now that they can lean to. Remember, after they ousted Mike McCarthy, or Kevin McCarthy, they turned around and said, it took him 3 weeks to get this clown. We had never heard of him before. Joe says, Dem needs to hold out for as long as it takes. It'll hurt me bad, but the alternative is worse. Yeah. Dems have nothing to lose here. One of the things that happened in March is Republicans told Democrats we would negotiate on Affordable Care Act subsidies later. Later is here. And now they're saying we're going to negotiate on it later. There's not much later left in the month or left in the year. We have about 10 weeks to the end of the year. That's it. Maybe 11. How much time are Republicans going to actually put out to negotiate? If Democrats say in good faith, okay, let's open the government, we take you at your word, you're going to negotiate in the next 10 weeks to fund the Affordable Care Act credits so people can have their health care. Don't believe it for a minute, because Republicans will bite you in the ass every time. They will. Because that's what they do. They don't negotiate in good faith. Beyond that, look at what happened this year. They negotiated supposedly in good faith, passed a clean CR, and said, okay, here's our funding level for the rest of the year till the end of September. And what'd they do? Come July, they passed the one big beautiful bill, cut a bunch of that spending they had previously agreed on, and cut a bunch of future spending, and then turned around and also passed the rescissions package that cut a bunch more money they had previously agreed on and negotiated in good faith. Why would Republicans think the Democrats would actually support them or would agree with them and say, sure, we take you at your word, when they have gotten bit in the ass time and time and time again? You can't, continue to screw somebody over like that and expect them to work with you. But that's what that's who the Republicans are. They think Democrats are dumb enough to keep going back and trying to get screwed over time and time again. It doesn't make any sense. Nobody would actually do that realistically. But Republicans think Democrats will do it every time. And the Democrats have finally said, okay, enough's enough. Enough saying we'll talk about it later. Enough saying, well, we're going to agree to this now, but we'll cut it later. No. And Republicans don't know what to do with that. because the Democrats don't typically play ball this way. So Democrats need to keep it up. They need to hold the line. And I think ultimately the Republicans are going to have to cave. I think they will cave. And when they do, there's going to be some Republicans that are going to be facing the ire of Donald Trump. And I think Mike Johnson might be one of them. Because Donald Trump wants the big win for being so tough on the liberals. He doesn't care that people are going to suffer. And if he was this bastard deal maker, like he claims to be, Mr. Art of the Deal, he would be leading the negotiations on a daily basis, in person, video calls. He'd be calling everybody else. He's not doing any of it. He's barely even aware enough that the government shut down. He knows enough to blame the Democrats because it shut down, but that's about it. Aunt Molly says because they have been dumb enough. Talking about Democrats having been dumb enough in the past. Yeah, they had been dumb enough to continue to vote for it. And that was one of the failings of Chuck Schumer as minority leader when the Republicans got control of the House, or the control of the Senate, I mean, earlier this year. Back in March, when they passed the previous CR, they played old school. They said, okay, we'll accept your conditions. We'll talk about all of our concerns, and we'll deal with it later. Not realizing that the later would never actually come. They should have held out then. Maybe things might have changed differently. Molly says Schumer has to go. You know, I wouldn't care if Schumer stays in the Senate. I'm not thrilled with him in the Senate, but I wouldn't care if he stayed. He just needs to be out of leadership. We need to get somebody young in there. You know, Schumer needs to go. Nancy Pelosi, I say this a lot, but you are telling me we can't find anybody in blue Democratic haven, San Francisco, to run than Nancy Pelosi? Good Lord. And the problem's on both sides of the aisle. The problem is both sides of the aisle. I mean, and yes, she was a Democrat. Yes, she was a great senator. But look at Dianne Feinstein. Liam says they're fossils. They need to go. Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. Dianne Feinstein ended up being in her... She was either 89, 90, or 91 when she died in office. She's still showing up to vote. They were trying to hold out and keep her in so they didn't have to run a primary and didn't have to run a special election or anything. And they were trying to get to the general election with her in office. But her daughter had already gone to court, stood before a judge, and had gotten power of attorney to control Senator Feinstein's finances because a judge agreed that she was not coherent enough to keep track of her own money. Sue P says Chuck Grassley. He's another one. He's right now 92 years old. He is up for re-election in 2028. He has already filed the paperwork to run again. He will be 96 years old. He has already filed the paperwork to run again. He will be 96 years old. And there are people in this state that will vote for Chuck Grassley because he has been there forever and a day, and they think because, yes, he is like the ranking number 2 Republican in the Senate because of seniority, that it helps Iowa. Republican in the Senate because of seniority, that it helps Iowa. It does, to a point. but he's also so out of touch of what the reality is anymore. We need somebody younger to represent Iowa. Quantum says we have some young, brilliant Dems. Time for old Dems to pass the torch. Yeah, and actually I would say not that they have brilliant people on the right, but it's time for the fossils on the right to retire too. Liam says fossil and Sue P says unbelievable. Time to retire and enjoy what you have left of your life, Mr. Grassley. You would. Sue P says unbelievable. Time to retire and enjoy what you have left of your life, Mr. Grassley. You would think when I get to be 92 years old, around 50 years from now, if I'm still working any other job than making videos like this and doing lives and whatever that would look like in 50 years, I don't want to be working. I don't. I can already tell you by 92, I do not want to be working. Well, and I've talked about this before. It got leaked what the plan was for Chuck Grassley. Now, they only have until after the midterm elections to pull this off, because after that, Kim Reynolds won't be the governor anymore, and I think Rob Sand is going to be the Democratic governor of Iowa after the midterm elections. But supposedly, the plan here in Iowa was to have Chuck Grassley retire and have Kim Reynolds appoint his grandson to the Senate. His grandson, who is like 42. That way, when people went in the voting booth and they don't really entirely pay attention, they see the name Grassley, they continue to vote for the name they recognize. And that way they can keep that Republican-controlled seat in the Senate with a younger Grassley. Keep that Republican-controlled seat in the Senate with a younger Grassley. Now, they haven't pulled it off yet. I don't know if Chuck is the one holding it up or what. Do Not Go Gently says, if Ruth Bader Ginsburg had retired under Obama, what do you think the SCOTUS would look like now? Depends on what time she retired in the Obama administration. She would have had to retire prior to 2016. She should have probably retired during the first half. Well, no. She would have had to retire, I believe, during Obama's first term, where he had control of the Senate. As long as Mitch McConnell was in there, they were going to do everything in their power to prevent him from putting a liberal justice. He would have had to nominate a conservative like he did with Merrick Garland. I don't know. I don't know what SCOTUS would have looked like. We probably wouldn't have Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court, though. It'd probably be a 5-4 majority, assuming things happen the same way. But, you know, if Republicans would have done their job in February of 2016 and voted on Merrick Garland, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg had retired, we'd probably have a 6-3 majority favoring liberals. Slightly, because Merrick Garland was more center than liberal, but we wouldn't have these far-right extreme nutbags in there. One of the changes I have suggested should be that we should make to the U.S. Supreme Court. And this is just my opinion, let me know what you guys think here, is that we need to put a time limit on nominations. That we need to put, we need a constitutional amendment to do this. I know, and I know the bar is high to do it. But it should be something like 6 months. Congress has 6 months to hold a vote. And if they don't hold a vote on the nomination, the nominee is considered approved. Something like that. That would prevent a corrupt majority leader like a Mitch McConnell saying, well, February is too close to the election, and keeping a seat open for a full year like they did in 2016 when Anton Garland. Do not go gently says, what are the top 5 changes we should do once this is all over? I think we need to modify the limits for who can be president. I think they need another constitutional amendment clarifying a few things. No felons. Maybe no one who is actively under criminal indictment in any jurisdiction. I mean, realistically, we would need term limits and age limits in Congress. Again, that one won't get through Congress. Most of the changes we need, we can't get through Congress right now. Expand the Supreme Court. Term limits and expand it. There should be 13 justices on the Supreme Court. And I'm not just saying that because that would give liberals the advantage by 1 vote. But there are 13 district courts. So 1 justice, 1 district court. When it went to 9, that was the reasoning for it being at 9, is we had 9 district courts. It makes sense. Molly says cognitive tests. Well, age limits would potentially solve that. If you put in some other limitations on who could be president, some other requirements perhaps, you could end up getting your way out of it without needing to do cognitive tests. The thing is, we only ever worried about cognitive tests the last 3 elections, really. We didn't even talk about it much with Donald Trump during his first term. Then he ran against Biden and he was talking about it because he was trying to use it as an insult against Biden. And then he got worse in that election, and now he's even worse. So that's the only reason we're really talking about it. The founders never expected us to elect or even nominate an 80-year-old person to be president, to even run. That wasn't even a consideration. Do Not Go Gently says, I'm in North Carolina and they announced we are going to start gerrymandering. You're disgusted. Yeah. Thing about the gerrymandering, though, I've said it a lot, is it actually gives Democrats an incentive to get out and vote. Because a lot of times what they're doing is they're taking a district that Donald Trump won by 60 to 65%. They're taking a chunk of those voters out. So if everybody who turned out to vote in 2024 turns out in 2026 and votes the way they did for the midterm candidate, they are expecting the Republican to win with like 53% instead of 64%, something like that. Well, that just means if Democrats show up in those districts, there's a chance they could flip some seats. One of the reasons Democrats weren't voting in some of those districts is because Republicans always won, and a big chunk of the Democrats really felt like they couldn't get their candidate across. They couldn't win. So the gerrymandering may come back and actually help Democrats. Sue says, karma reply, but Trump on the dementia shit. Yeah. Yeah. Every accusation is a confession with Donald Trump. Every accusation is a confession with Donald Trump. Almost every single time. Molly says Moses Mike ran unopposed. That's the other problem. Is they have these districts so gerrymandered that certain people can run unopposed because they are the Democrats don't even put up a candidate because they're convinced they're going to get beat that bad. And Democrats need to do a better job of putting a candidate up in every race, funding those candidates in every race. But they don't, because they just concede certain races. Don't get me wrong, Republicans do that too. And they're trying to be more strategic with their money. But the difference is, I think there are some districts where Republicans are only as successful as they are because Democrats never run. If Democrats ran, they wouldn't win by 80% of the vote. Do not go gently says, Kamala won the city I'm in. Well, it's good to hear. I really thought it was going to be much closer. I thought North Carolina was going to go for Kamala Harris. I thought a lot of states were going to go for Kamala Harris. All the evidence was pointing toward her winning in a blue wave. That she was going to sweep the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And she was going to have at least 2 years to get anything she needed done. Quantum says, can someone please tell white Christian nationals that they are not mentioned in the Bible? Exactly. In fact, from what I understand and what I was always taught about the Bible, Christian nationalism is like the antithesis of what Jesus would have taught. He didn't want you to have a Christian government. He just wanted you to do good things. Good evening, Joe. Yeah. Christian nationalism doesn't exist, but they seem to believe that we are a Christian nation. We're not. We were never built on Christianity. Do not go gently. Dems won down ballot in North Carolina, but Trump won the presidency. Still suspicious. Yeah. I get where that's coming from. I do. There was a lot of places where that seemed to go against what you would expect. And what you would expect. And I really expected her to do better. You know, I really thought she was going to outperform Joe Biden. Especially with all the videos you were seeing people. I saw videos of people from Iowa that were out of state getting on planes, flying back to Iowa to make sure they could cast their vote in their home district on election day so they didn't lose their ballot with mail-in voting. And they were voting for Kamala. I mean, the whole thing is a little bizarre. Joe says the Republicans can't seem to have empathy. No, they cannot. They have no empathy for another person, and they only care when their policies bite them in the ass. Molly says, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, render to God what is God's. Yeah, that's the quote. Unfortunately, Republicans and Christian nationalists like to blur the two. Joe says voter suppression. Oh, they did tons of voter suppression. One example here in Iowa, they changed early registration. They took out, I think it was like 20 days of early voting here in Iowa, where you could vote in person. They made it harder to go get a ballot, to get your mail-in ballot. They made it so the Secretary of State could not just mail out ballots to everybody that was a registered voter. You had to take steps to request a mail-in ballot and go do all of that yourself. Republicans know one of the things about elections. When voters turn up, Democrats win. They are not the they are not the silent majority they think they are. I have been hearing about how Christians and Catholics and Republicans are the silent majority in this country. We're so silent and we have our voices stifled. I've been hearing that for 40 years. They're so silent and we have our voices stifled. I've been hearing that for 40 years. They're a very vocal minority of people. You just can't get through to them on it. That because they have a persecution complex. They want to be persecuted. They think that's a great thing. And they will find ways to say they are being persecuted even when they're not. Also, while actually persecuting other people. Quantum says, is it possible that 77 million out of the 330 million could be suffering from the same affliction, psychosis? No. Some of it was apathy. There was a section of people who did vote because they voted for Trump just to change it up. I know one person I used to work with, he would have voted for Trump just because he wanted to quicken whatever destruction was going to happen and not prevent it, because he wanted to see how bad it could really get. Really made me question why we don't have competency tests for voters. And I think part of the reason Kamala Harris lost, I've said it before, I'll say it again. There's two big reasons. One, when Joe Biden decided in July to not seek re-election, that was way too late. And if you look at history, LBJ did the same thing, but in March, and it screwed his VP, who had to take up the reins and run the rest of the race. It didn't work. So Joe Biden should have stayed in and, gone ahead and fought the rest of the race. Get past the election, get sworn in and resign, or serve out as much of his term or whatever. I think that was part of it. But what I think should have happened is the day Joe Biden chose to not seek re-election, he should have resigned. Said, hey, my health isn't the best. I'm, you know what? I feel okay, but I don't have many years left. I'm going to spend the rest of my time with my family. And resigned. let Kamala Harris become president. She would have been president. We would have gotten past the bullshit of, oh, we're going to elect the first black woman. I know there's a section of this country that would have lost their damn minds about how she got appointed, or how she, won the presidency by Joe Biden resigning or whatever. But then they couldn't say anything because when people voted for her in the general, they voted for the ticket for that exact outcome. And she should have been the president. And I think there would have been a lot of people in this country that would have voted for her to give her a full term of her own. Just because she'd only would have had 107 days up to the election at that point of being president. And they would have said, let's see what she's got. I think she could have pushed that out to actually make a case to get a full term. And I know what to do with you. They make it too easy to block them. They say she couldn't become a constitutional president. How? Because the 11th Amendment says you can't be vice president if you cannot be president. Because she was vice president, clearly she could be president. You just wanted a reason to hate. And you throw that word fascist around, but which party actually checks off the 14 boxes of fascism? You don't know what the word means. Now, I'm talking to somebody who ain't even here anymore. I've already blocked them. I mean, I already blocked them, but it's just weird to me how they are so wrong on so many things, and they can be easily proven wrong, and yet they think they're, absolutely right on everything. Quantum says because they don't read. No, they don't. One of the things they liked about Donald Trump is he speaks at about a 5th grade level. And that's probably actually insulting 5th graders. Because I know there are some 5th graders that are actually really smart. Molly said, I'm guessing that's supposed to be blinded by hate. And they are. Donald Trump made it okay to hate a certain group of people. Taylor says they are as delusional as Trump. Yeah. Yeah. They just come out, they say things with their full chest, like they couldn't possibly be wrong. And yet they're proven wrong almost every single time. It's not even hard at this point. But primarily I just block them and then comment about whatever they said afterward. It's not worth them reporting me. Quantum says they hear and then regurgitate what they hear. Yeah, they do. And a lot of times they don't even hear correctly. They hear bits and pieces. Like when it comes to immigration, I was in a live last night. And this guy kept saying, well, Obama did this with deportations. And he was doing the same thing Trump was. And we're like, so he was sending ICE in to round up people with no warrant, no due process, and just send them out of the country. And then he would read off something about how they had an administrative hearing. Well, that's due process. They had orders of deportation. They'd already been through the steps. He was just getting rid of the ones that had already been cleared for deportation. Not the same thing. Not rounding up people based on the color of their skin and saying, well, we think you're here illegal, so we're going to send you wherever we want. They're two different things, but they don't care about nuance. They don't care about... they're two different things, but they don't care about nuance. They don't care about context. They will tell you something that's completely fucked up, but you need the context from the fucked up thing to understand context. Do Not Go Gently says, we need to get rid of electoral votes. One of the things with electoral votes, the Electoral College is effectively DEI for red states, for low population states. It's trying to even the playing field, and it's a holdover from slavery. It is. Because the rural southern states in the early days, right after the Revolutionary War, they wanted to count a certain group of people as a 3/5 of a person to help boost their electoral vote and make them a bigger group so they had more sway. But they didn't want to give them full rights. We couldn't do that now. Didn't want to give them freedom. Couldn't do that now. But we want to count them when it comes toward electoral. It is a very flawed system. And for the most part, if they get rid of the Electoral College, then a Republican rarely would win ever. Ever. Donald Trump winning the popular vote in 2024 was a fluke. He was like the first Republican since Reagan's second term to win the electoral and the popular. George W. might have done it too, but still. It only happened a couple times since Reagan. If you go to straight popular vote, Democrats win almost every time. And it would encourage Democratic voters who don't vote in red states because of the Electoral College and they know their state is going to go for the Republican candidate anyway. It would encourage them to vote. Joe says, that's why I believe it was rigged. If they can prove it, I would be willing to entertain some theory if we had some proof. I just don't want to go down the same rabbit hole that MAGA did. But the whole thing because Donald Trump's involved and he's shady, it begs the question, maybe? So, you don't know. Did you guys see the cover of Time? Where they put out a cover talking about Donald Trump getting this ceasefire. Called it his triumph. But the picture is from below and to the left, and you get a Buffy. Surprisingly unpierced. Makes you wonder. Jeffrey says, hey, people in Gaza are celebrating Trump. Why can't you if you truly want to free Palestine? I know what to do with you, Jeffrey. Another repeater. He just repeats what he hears. Oh, I was talking about... was it when I was talking about Jeffrey's comment? He says, hey, people in Gaza are celebrating Trump. Why can't you? If you truly want to free Palestine, what a joke. Because it wasn't Donald Trump's peace plan. Because he embarrassed us on the world stage again with his actions surrounding the peace plan. And he's talked about moving everybody that is Palestinian out of Gaza and making it effectively Trump Gaza Strip. It's ridiculous. Quantum says it predicted MAGA. I don't know what you mean. What predicted MAGA? Months? Othon? I don't know what that is. Are you talking about Monty Python? And which Monty Python? Because now I may have something to go find on a streaming service and go watch later. Which one? Oh, it was a Monty Python series. Not sure which one that would be then, but I'll have to go look. Maybe I can find one and watch it later. But we've always had to deal with conservatives and people who don't think critically. It's just getting worse now, in part because of the internet. Everybody's interconnected. They get into echo chambers. They only want to hear content that fits their narrative. And I know Republicans will say the same thing about me for blocking them, but they don't come in with any facts. They come in with talking points and sound bites. Hey! Apparently the dog scared herself awake. One of the few times she actually barks. Now that she's awake, come here. Oh, in a break from political news, I'll give you Puppy. Oh, goodness. Did you scare yourself awake? Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, between the two of us, she's the cute one. Oh, goodness. But, yeah, okay. There we go. I don't know what that was all about, but yeah, go back to sleep. Donald Trump embarrasses us on the world stage. Really does. And he's too dumb to even realize that he embarrasses us on the world stage, even as it's happening. He really thinks all the world leaders find him hilarious, that they think he's great, that they love him as much as he loves himself. He firmly believes that. It is just pathetic. Joe says, I read a Ben Bova book that depicted a theocratic America. Oh, I would hate to see that. Do not go gently says, I gotta go. It's getting late. Enjoyed the chat as always. Super cute pup. Night all. See you. Do not go gently. This is just going to be a reminder for everybody. I'm going to go about another 20 minutes or so. But if you can't catch the whole thing, or you missed part in the beginning, or you've had to leave and come back, whatever, these will be posted up over on my YouTube page, Analyticaliowan, over on YouTube. I post all my TikToks. I post all my TikTok lives over there. And you can also catch the audio from the live on Spotify as well. Also Analyticaliowan on Spotify. My TikToks, the audio from them end up over there as well. So encourage you to check it out. Just another option for how you can catch my content. Because TikTok likes to bury me. As you can see, I've only got 14 people in the room. And that's about where it's been for going on an hour now. About an hour and 10 minutes that I've been doing this. By the time we got to about 10 to 15 people, it stayed about there. But so Joe, you said a Ben Bova book that depicted a theocratic America. Well, that's about as un-American as I can. So Joe, you said a Ben Bova book that depicted a theocratic America. Well, that's about as un-American as I can think of. Because we've never been a Christian nation. Ever. And when religion was talked about in some of the early paperwork, it was done in the most generic of terms. And they didn't necessarily even mention a specific God. For example, in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson wrote, "Endowed by their creator." Didn't mention a specific creator. Didn't say which creator deity. Didn't say the Christian God. Just their creator. It was written in vague terms. So whatever your religious belief was, you could accept it. But again, MAGA doesn't comprehend that. Joe says it was bad. I bet it was bad. I could only imagine how bad a theocratic America could be. Like I said, it goes against everything that we are built upon. Really does. So, I have no idea how long this government shutdown is going to go. We could be looking at longer than 35 days. We could be looking at the end of the year. I mean, if it stays like this, we could be looking at all the way to the midterms. I don't think it'll get that far. I think somebody will give between here and there, but Republicans aren't negotiating and Democrats aren't backing down. And Republicans think they have the upper hand. They really don't in this one. They just don't. Joe says, when I see what MAGA is doing, it scares the hell out of me. I'd agree. MAGA has corrupted religion. They've corrupted a lot of ideals from how this country should be ran. And And they have their roots in the Tea Party. They have their roots going all the way back to the election of Barack Obama in 2008. Probably before that, but I'd say Barack Obama in '08, the roots of MAGA were forming and coming up to the surface. If Republicans had been a little stronger and not pushed all of the decent Republicans out of the race, we might not have been in this mess in 2016. If the Democrats hadn't ran Hillary Clinton, who at the time was probably the one politician on the Democratic side that had the most skeletons in her closet that they could run, and ran somebody else halfway decent, we wouldn't be in this mess. But they ran the one person that would energize the right to get out and vote against Hillary Clinton. Joe says, if they ran Bernie. Bernie might have won. I only say might because Bernie did have some issues. In part, they like to bash Bernie about being a socialist and all of the stuff he wanted to give away. And the big thing about his plan was, he said, well, it's in my plan. But he wasn't overly forthcoming with the details. Now, maybe I missed it, but it didn't seem like those details were as forthcoming about how all of this was going to pay for itself, and Republicans used it against him. But I still think Bernie could have beat Donald Trump. I mean, Kamala Harris was supposed to beat Donald Trump last time. All the indicators was looking like she was going to win. Nando says, I was too young in 2016 to be aware of what was going on. I want to understand why Dems chose Hillary. Couple reasons. And the biggest reason, if I'm being honest, was she got the most representatives in the primaries. If we're being honest, they ran primaries. She won more delegates in the primary. She should have been the candidate. But they also thought, coming off the heels of Barack Obama, that the momentum for change was continuing and that they could run a female candidate, they could run a woman, and they could win. And they go ahead. And then you come up against Donald Trump, who is, well, Donald Trump, a misogynist, a callback to the 1950s, and one of what should have been one of the easiest victories for the Democrats. But they ran Hillary Clinton. And she only stuck to main cities. She didn't do a lot of campaigning out in swing states, and kind of almost talked down to people, turned a lot of voters off. And they thought they had their race in the bag, that it was a foregone conclusion that she was going to win and beat Donald Trump. If they would have ran literally anybody else, they probably would have beat Donald Trump and we wouldn't be here. Because I guarantee you Donald Trump wouldn't, if he wouldn't have won the first time, I don't think he would have campaigned again in 2020. He would have gone back to doing business, gone back to doing The Apprentice, and talking shit on the side. I've said a lot, Donald Trump fell ass backwards into the presidency. I don't think he intended to win in 2016. I don't think he intended to actually be the Republican nominee. I think his plan was to run, get a whole bunch of donor money, get beat after a few states in the primaries, drop out, and collect the money. And then once the race was over, he could say, "Well, my campaign's over. I get to pocket that now." I think that was his initial plan. And then he started running, and he started getting delegates, and he started having success. And then once he started getting success, he kept steamrolling that success. And next thing you know, he's unstoppable. And then he's going up against Hillary Clinton, somebody he should have beat, or he shouldn't have beat. And he falls ass backwards into the presidency because he somehow beats her. Why couldn't they give Bernie a chance? What did Hillary have that Bernie didn't, and vice versa? Well, a couple things. One, Hillary Clinton was a Democrat. Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. He is an independent that leans Democrat. He is not actually a member of the Democratic Party. And while it may seem like a distinction without a difference, the party establishment, part of them did not want to run somebody who was not part of their party. What did Hillary have that Bernie didn't? But I wouldn't say name recognition, but Hillary had the better story, going to be the first female president, and she won the right number of delegates to be the candidate. Now, anybody else other than Bernie Sanders, well before the convention, would have dropped out. Bernie Sanders didn't, because he was fighting to the end. Now, maybe he saw something that we didn't see, and he thought Hillary was going to lose. And that's why he stayed in for as long as he did. But he wasn't a Democrat. And that's part of the reason why the delegates and super delegates, after they were already pledged to go for Hillary, didn't change their mind, and they nominated Hillary. Joe says Bernie had more delegates. I don't think so. Pretty sure Hillary ended up having enough delegates at one point to win. And Bernie hadn't dropped out yet. Let's see if I'm wrong. I'm going to look it up. Let's see. Bernie Della gets 2016. When it was all said and done, here are the numbers. Where'd it go? Hillary Clinton, 2,842 delegates. Bernie Sanders, 1,865. Nando says it was clear the U.S. was not ready to elect a woman that had elected Trump. Dems didn't learn in 24. Well, there were multiple issues, and you weren't in the live, I don't think, when I talked about it earlier. I think Joe Biden should have stepped down and resigned the presidency when he decided not to seek re-election. He stepped out of the race way too late in the year. She only had 107 days to seek the election. It was too late. They had to go with the correct choice, which was Kamala Harris, especially because of funding, etc. Because there was a whole bunch of money that was fundraised with the Biden-Harris name on it, and if Joe Biden stepped out, she could still run with those campaign funds. They only had like 12 days to come up with a replacement before ballots had to be finalized in certain states. And Republicans were saying, because they were Republican leading states, that if they didn't have the nominee on time, that they wouldn't put Joe Biden or whoever replaced him on the ballot. And then Kamala Harris ran far too long toward the end of the campaign with Liz Cheney, at her side. She was campaigning for too long with Liz Cheney, instead of making sure she had left-leaning voters locked in to vote for her. There were a lot of problems with how the Democrats handled the 2024 election. And I think in part because they were seeing the same thing I was seeing. And I said at the time, I thought Hillary was going to win in 16, but I was talking about 24. I thought Kamala Harris was going to win in 24, and she was going to take both chambers of Congress. I did. All the writing on the wall was leaning that direction. Now we'll see what the Democrats do in 28 and who they run. Democrats have a deep bench, and there's no clear front runner right now, aside from maybe Gavin Newsom, and he's got his own list of problems. So we'll have to see. And do the Democrats try to run a woman for a third time in 4 years? Or do they go back and go more of a conservative pick a more traditional candidate? Somebody say like Gavin Newsom, somebody like Shapiro in Pennsylvania. And why is it the election results map from 2016 look messy with many faithless electors? Now, I don't remember any faithless electors from 2016, but the electoral maps or the delegate maps always look messy. And superdelegates get a vote for whoever they want. Those are something different entirely. Jay of the Canadian Path is out there. Jay says he has a new name for the White House staff if they were a band. Oh, this ought to be good. Or the cabinet. What is that, Jay? Joe says you hate to admit it, but you voted for Trump in 2016. In February 2017, I started paying attention. If you voted for Trump the first time and then went, oh, fuck, that's not necessarily all bad, because he was the outside candidate. We didn't, he was something different. you could end up, you saw the error of your ways. It's the people that have seen everything since 2016 and still went, yeah, that's my guy, that I have an issue with. So, Jay, what's your name for the cabinet? Set up my other lives, I have voted Republican, I have voted Democrat, I have voted Independent. And looking back at the people I have voted for and where, etc., I'll say this. I have never once regretted voting for a Democrat. I have regretted voting for Republicans, and I've regretted voting for some independents. All right. Jay says, why don't my last two messages appear? Could be they got censored out by TikTok. Depending on what you said, it might have flagged something in the algorithm automatically. I haven't seen any warnings appear yet, but it's the only thing I can think of. Nando says he'd start a trade war for attention. Yeah, Donald Trump started a trade war for attention. Joe says, up until last year, everyone I voted for won. Um, for presidential, I had a pretty good track record for a while too. At least on the presidential. I know I've definitely missed a few on Senate and House, specifically here in Iowa when I've been trying to get rid of Chuck Grassley for, well, this will be the third election. When he comes up for re-election next time, it'll be the third election I've tried to vote him out. Jay says, up Chuck Graceless. Yeah. Was that your name for the band, or is that your new name for Chuck Grassley? Jay says, we've got Nancy, my birth certificate's expired Pelosi over here. Yeah. Yeah, like I've said before, and I said it earlier in this live, you can't tell me that there isn't any Democrat in the entirety of San Francisco that could win, except for Nancy Pelosi? I don't think so. But I've been going a little over 90 minutes here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. That's about the point I like to hit on the top end. Otherwise, it just takes forever to get downloaded. I'm going to download this. It will go up over on my YouTube page whenever it finishes through TikTok. And the audio will go up over on Spotify later tonight. So if you missed part of the live, you want to go back, catch it again. If you came in late and you want to hear the whole thing, whatever, that's where you can find it. Again, it'll be up over on my YouTube page, Analyticaliowan on YouTube, or the audio will be up on Spotify, Analyticaliowan on Spotify. Nando, you said you love the stream. Do I regularly live stream around this time? Hit and miss. When I do go live, I usually go about 9:30 Central, in that ballpark if I go that night. Sometimes I will go earlier if I've got something else going on. I try not to start much past 9:30-ish Central. It just depends on what my work schedule looks like and how my day pans out. But I am going to try to keep doing more lives, at least more frequently, and not go months in between without doing them like I did there for a little bit. So I'm going to catch you guys later. Like I said, this one is going to go up like all mine do over on my YouTube page or on Spotify. And I will catch you the next time I go live.